Welcome in, everyone. Ready for a deep dive into flow state.
Definitely. Always up for exploring this stuff.
And we've got some really cool material to work with today. Excerpts from a Stanford Business School article, a Psychology Today piece, even some historical examples of people supposedly in flow.
Yeah, it's a really interesting mix. And, one thing that jumps out at me is how these sources kind of push us to see flow state as being more than just like that feeling of being in the zone.
Right, right.
It's not just for like athletes and artists. It's something that could benefit anyone, any field, even to help people just like succeed in life overall.
Absolutely. Okay, so basics first. What exactly is flow state? I feel like we hear the term all the time, but that Psychology Today article actually gives a pretty clear definition.
Yeah, they describe it as like this psychological state where you are completely absorbed in what you're doing,
Hmm.
so much so that you lose track of time, and it feels like you have this effortless control. Like being in the groove, everything just clicks. And psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, he's the guy who really brought this concept to light, called it an optimal experience.
I love that optimal experience. But now I'm curious about this Stanford research you mentioned. I mean, they're saying that you don't need this perfect match between your skill level and the challenge to get into flow, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Like the old view was you need this perfect balance,
Right.
Too easy, you get bored. Too hard, you get frustrated.
Totally. But this new research, it was led by David Melnikoff, it argues that flow actually, it might be more likely when you start with a high level of uncertainty and then you kind of systematically reduce it through what you do.
So it's not about avoiding uncertainty, it's like lining into it.
Yeah, in a way, yeah.
But hold on, don't we need some certainty to, plan things, execute them? How can you be in flow if you don't even know what you're doing?
That's a great question, and that's
Yeah.
that's kind of what makes this research so fascinating, right?
Yeah.
So Melnikoff, he's arguing it's the process of actually reducing the uncertainty that flips the switch on the flow state.
Uh-huh.
It's tapping into, we humans, we've got this curiosity, this drive to understand the world. And when we successfully navigate that uncertainty, our brains, they give us a little reward, this feeling of, being super engaged and enjoying it.
I see.
And boom, flow state.
So it's like solving a puzzle.
Yeah, easy.
The thrill is in figuring it out, not just like knowing the answer from the start.
Exactly. It's the journey, not just the destination. And, these Stanford researchers, they actually tested this with a coin flip experiment.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So they found people were way more likely to experience flow when they flipped a coin, but they didn't know if it was going to land on heads or tails.
Oh, okay.
It was that 50-50 chance, that surprise. That's what set the stage for flow. But if they knew how the coin was going to land, PFT, no flow.
Wow, so uncertainty really is key here. They saw this in other experiments too, right? Something about a slingshot.
Oh, yeah, the slingshot game.
Yeah.
So they had people play this game, try to hit a target. And the ones who started with more uncertainty, meaning they didn't know exactly how that slingshot was going to behave, they got way more into flow.
Huh.
And get this later, those same people, they actually preferred the games designed for flow, even if they were objectively harder.
Really?
Yeah. It suggests that flow isn't just like a fleeting feeling. It's something we're actually drawn to, something our brains are like, give me more of that.
That is fascinating. But okay, I get how this uncertainty plays a role, but how does this all connect to actually getting things done? We talk about flow state like it's this key to success, but how does that work in the real world?
Well, if you zoom out a bit, flow isn't just about like feeling good. It's about performing at your best.
Yeah.
Think about it. When you're truly in flow, distractions fade away. Your focus is laser sharp. You tap into this incredible level of efficiency and creativity. It's like unlocking some hidden potential you have.
So it's not just about getting more done, it's about like doing things better.
Precisely. And that's where the connection to success becomes clear.
Right? Okay. Yeah.
Think about Michael Jordan, his flu game.
Oh, yeah.
The guy was sick, battling a terrible flu, barely able to stand, but he gets on the court and something shifts. He enters this flow state, blocks out all the distractions, even his own like physical discomfort, and delivers one of the most legendary performances of his career.
Yeah, it's amazing.
It shows how flow can elevate you beyond what you think your limits are.
And that's just one example. We've got those mind-blowing historical moments, like Beethoven composing Eroica while going deaf, J.K. Rowling writing Harry Potter while struggling financially. It's like flow state gives people this this power to go beyond their circumstances and tap into something truly extraordinary.
It really is something else. And what's fascinating is this isn't just limited to, like, these larger-than-life figures. The Psychology Today article, it emphasizes that flow state isn't some mystical gift. It's a skill. You can train it.
Really?
It's about the choices you make and what tasks you take on, the environment you set up. They break it down into 9 components, and luckily for us, they're not talking about, like, mystical rituals or anything.
Okay, good.
It's about conscious choices to invite flow in.
Okay, so like a recipe for flow, I'm ready. What's the first ingredient?
Well, the first 4 components, they focus on picking the right task. And the foundation, that's having clear goals. You got to know exactly what you want to achieve. Vague goals. That's like flow kryptonite.
So instead of saying, I want to write a novel, it's more like, I'm going to write 500 words of my fantasy novel every day.
Exactly. That level of clarity is key. And it's not just for, like, big goals. It works for everyday stuff, too. Think about coding, saying, build this specific feature. That'll keep you way more engaged than, like, make the code better, which is way too vague.
Right. Specificity. Clarity of goals, check. What's the next ingredient in our flow recipe?
You need immediate feedback. You got to know if you're on the right track, making progress.
Yeah.
Think about playing an instrument.
Right.
You hear instantly if you hit the right note, which keeps you engaged, motivated to keep going.
That makes total sense, yeah.
That instant feedback keeps you in the loop and stops you from, like, going down rabbit holes or getting discouraged.
Okay, so we've got clear goals, immediate feedback.
Yeah.
What about that challenge skill balance we talked about earlier?
This is where it gets interesting.
Yeah.
So while perfect balance isn't, like, the goal, you still need a task that's challenging enough, but not too overwhelming.
Right.
Too easy, you get bored. Too hard, you get frustrated. The sweet spot is that just manageable level where you're pushing yourself, but you still think, okay, I can do this. They actually have a great visual for this in the article, a graph that shows that optimal zone for flow.
Ooh, visual aids. Always a fan of a good graph. All right, so we've got clear goals, immediate feedback, that Goldilocks level of challenge. What's the final ingredient for picking the perfect flow-inducing task?
This one's really cool. The task needs to be autotelic.
Auto what now? No worries, I can handle jargon, but, for our listeners, let's break that down a bit.
You got it. Autotelic, it basically means the activity itself is enjoyable and rewarding, like no matter the outcome. It's about finding the things that line up with your intrinsic values, the things you actually just love to do, just for the pure pleasure of it. Think about that feeling of, like, getting totally lost in a hobby and time just flies by.
Yeah.
That's autotelic.
So if you're someone who thrives on learning new things or solving puzzles, expressing creativity, you're more likely to hit that flow state when you're doing tasks that actually, like, feed those core values.
Exactly. And if you're not sure what your core values are, they recommend taking an online intrinsic values test.
Okay.
It can help you figure out what truly motivates you, which can be super helpful when picking tasks that are more likely to trigger flow.
So we've nailed down the task itself, but what about, like, the environment you're in? Does that play a role in achieving flow state too?
Absolutely. The next 3 components, they're all about creating the perfect flow-friendly environment. And the first one is, you guessed it, concentration. To really get into something, you got to minimize those distractions that are constantly, like, fighting for your attention.
Which is, let's be honest, so much easier said than done these days, right?
Oh,
I mean, we're constantly bombarded with stuff.
for you.
But I do find when I can carve out some truly distraction-free time, my focus just skyrockets, and it feels much easier to slip into that flow state.
It's definitely a challenge, but it's essential. Yeah.
Yeah.
Even little things like, silencing your phone, closing extra tabs on your computer, finding a quiet spot to work, that can make a huge difference.
Well, for sure. And there's research that backs that up, right? Like, I've read about how lighting, air quality, even the temperature of the room can impact focus and productivity.
Totally. It's all about creating a space where your brain can actually relax and focus on what you're doing. Okay, ready for the next environmental element. This one might sound a little counterintuitive.
Hit me with it.
It's about letting go of self-consciousness.
Wait, really? So, like, if I'm trying to write, the next great American novel, I shouldn't be channeling that tortured artist persona. No more pacing around in a beret, agonizing over every word.
A little drama can be fun, but the research is saying that too much self-awareness can actually block flow. It's about getting out of your head, and just letting yourself get totally absorbed in what you're doing.
Oh, I see.
If you're constantly thinking about how you look or what other people might think, it just pulls you out of the moment and makes it harder to reach that effortless flow.
So no mirrors, no audience, no environments that make you feel self-conscious. Got it. What's the final ingredient for our flow-conducive environment?
It's all about control. If you feel like, you're constantly at the mercy of outside forces, it's really tough to get into that flow state. You need to feel like you're the one in charge, that you have agency over what you're doing in your surroundings.
That makes a lot of sense. How can you lose yourself in something if you feel powerless or micromanaged, right?
Right, exactly. The research even suggests that people who have more autonomy in their jobs report much higher levels of flow.
Huh. That's interesting.
Yeah. So it's not just about getting rid of distractions. It's about creating an environment that feels empowering, where you can really own your work.
Okay, so we've chosen the right task. We've crafted the perfect environment. What happens next? Do we just sit back and wait for flow to magically appear?
Well, not quite. Remember, flow state is an experience. It's a state of being that comes from all these conditions we've been talking about. And to really understand what that experience is like, the Psychology Today article, they outline two key components of it. First, there's this merging of action and awareness.
Okay, break that down for me. What does that actually feel like?
Imagine a musician who's just totally lost in their performance. They're not thinking about individual notes or where their fingers are on the instrument. Their actions are just so fluid and automatic. It's like their awareness is merging with the music itself.
Wow, that's a beautiful image.
Well, right.
It's like you reach this level of mastery where the thinking and the doing become one. And what's that other key component?
It's, they call it time transformation. You know how sometimes you can work on something for hours and it feels like minutes, and other times minutes can feel like hours?
Oh, yeah. Tell me about it, especially when I'm facing a deadline I don't want to deal with.
Right. Well, in a flow state,
Yeah.
your perception of time, it can completely shift. It might feel like time slows down so you can savor every detail, or it might speed up, making hours disappear in what feels like minutes.
So that explains why some people can spend hours on a project and come out of it feeling energized, like they didn't even notice the time passing.
Totally.
It's like stepping into a different dimension where the normal rules of time don't apply. Okay, we have covered a lot of ground here.
We have. And it's important to remember that this isn't just some, esoteric concept. It's something anyone can access.
Yeah, it's not about being some kind of genius or having some special talent. It's about understanding those underlying mechanisms, those 9 components we talked about, and then consciously creating those conditions that make flow more likely to happen. And the more you experience it, the more you unlock those benefits that can, really transform your life.
Absolutely. And I think that's a great place to pause for now. When we come back, we'll delve deeper into those benefits and explore how flow state can impact, everything from how productive you are to your overall sense of well-being.
Welcome back. Before we jump into those benefits of flow, I wanted to get your take on something. We were talking about how flow requires, letting go of self-consciousness. But isn't there a flip side to that?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Don't we sometimes need that self-awareness to catch mistakes, to, course correct, especially in complex tasks?
That's a really good point. And it kind of highlights how nuanced flow is. It's not about completely shutting down your inner critic,
Right.
It's more like finding that sweet spot between focused action and being able to step back and observe a bit. Think of it like driving, right?
Okay, yeah.
You're not constantly analyzing every tiny movement of the steering wheel, but you're still aware of what's around you.
Right.
You're ready to adjust if you need to.
That's a perfect analogy. So it's not about being mindless. It's about trusting your skills and your intuition enough to let go of that overthinking that can sometimes block flow.
Okay, now I'm really curious about those benefits we touched on earlier. We keep talking about flow as this key to success and fulfillment, but let's get specific. What are some of the ways it can actually impact our lives?
Well, one of the most obvious benefits is just, being more productive.
Yeah.
When you're in flow, distractions fade away, you're laser focused on the task. You can just work with incredible efficiency. You're operating at peak mental capacity,
And that's not just a feeling, right? There's actual research to back this up.
Oh, absolutely. Studies have shown that people in flow state, they're significantly more productive than those who aren't. They come up with more ideas, solve problems faster, and complete tasks more accurately.
And we We see this all the time in real life.
Bro, where? Sure.
Like athletes, Usain Bolt, Serena Williams achieving these amazing things.
Oh, yeah. They're not just physically gifted, they're masters at tapping into flow state to really elevate their performance.
Totally. And it's not just about like physical performance either. Creative professionals, entrepreneurs, scientists, anyone who needs to solve tough problems, come up with new ideas, or produce really high quality work, they can all benefit from flow. Remember how Elon Musk talks about his success being tied to that ability to really immerse himself in a problem?
Yeah, yeah.
It's like flow unlocks this creative energy within us.
So flow state equals getting more done in less time and with more ease. Sign me up. What else does flow have to offer?
Well, another big one is that it helps you learn and develop skills faster.
Okay, how so?
When you're really engaged and immersed in something, you just absorb information more easily. You're more likely to make those connections that lead to a deeper understanding.
So it's like flow kind of greases the wheels of your brain, makes it more open to new information and skills.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the fact that it's enjoyable plays a big role here. If you're having fun while you're learning, you're more likely to keep at it, to push yourself further, and eventually, master it. Think about learning a new language. If you approach it like a chore, it's going to be slow, painful, but if you can find ways to make it fun, to get into that flow state, your progress will be way faster.
That makes a lot of sense. It's like that saying, time flies when you're having fun. But in this case, it's not just about time flying, it's about your skills developing faster, too. Okay, so flow makes us more productive, helps us learn faster. Anything else?
Well, this one might not be as obvious, but flow can really affect your well-being, your happiness.
Oh, wow. Okay, so it's not just a productivity hack, it's like a path to a more fulfilling life. How does that work? I mean, how can just being in the zone lead to greater happiness?
So when you're in flow, you're completely focused on the present moment. All your worries and anxieties, those thoughts about the past or the future, they just fade away as you become one with what you're doing. It's like a form of active meditation, pure presence, and it brings a sense of calm and contentment.
It's funny, when I think about the times I felt closest to flow state, it's often been when I was super into some creative project, writing, painting, even messing around with music. And in those moments, it's like nothing else exists. No self-doubt, no worries, just pure creation. And afterwards, I always feel this amazing sense of peace, like I tapped into something really deep.
That's a perfect example of how flow contributes to well-being, yeah.
Yeah.
It's about those moments of pure presence where you're completely in sync with what you're doing, and it's incredibly powerful. Plus that feeling of mastery, of accomplishment that comes with flow that can really boost your self-esteem, your overall happiness.
It's like a positive feedback loop, right?
Exactly.
Flow leads to enjoyment. Enjoyment leads to more flow. And in the end, it can lead to a richer, more fulfilling life. Okay, so we've established that flow state is pretty amazing, both for getting things done and for just living a better life. But here's the real question. How do we make it happen more often? I mean, I can't just snap my fingers and magically be in flow whenever I want.
Right. No magic button for this, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But remember those 9 components we talked about earlier from the Psychology Today article?
Yeah.
Those give us like a roadmap, guidelines for setting things up so that flow is more likely to show up. And it all starts with picking the right task and creating the best environment.
Right. Clear goals, immediate feedback, that Goldilocks level of challenge and activity that matches our values. And then making a space that's free from distractions, where we feel in control and where we can let go of being self-conscious. But let's get practical. What are some actual steps we can take to invite more flow into our lives?
One of the most powerful things, honestly, is to just schedule time for those flow-inducing activities.
Oh, okay.
It's so easy to get caught up in, the daily grind, but if you're serious about this flow thing, you got to treat it like a meeting you can't miss.
So put it on your calendar, set reminders, make it non-negotiable. But it's not just about blocking out the time, right?
Right.
You got to actually be mindful of how we use that time too.
Exactly. Choose those activities that can trigger flow for you. What are the things that make you forget about time, where you just get lost and energized? Maybe it's writing, coding, playing music, gardening, whatever it is. Make time for it. And don't just assume that flow will just happen. Be proactive.
Yeah.
Set up your environment so it works for you.
Yep.
Silence your phone. Close those tempting browser tabs. Create that flow-conducive space we talked about.
Yeah, create that sacred space, both physically and mentally, where you can really dive into the activity without distractions.
Okay, scheduled flow time? Check. Anything else? This might sound a bit cliche, but mindfulness can really help.
Okay.
Things like meditation, deep breathing, they can help train your mind to stay focused and present, which are both key for getting into and staying in flow.
So it's like strengthening those mental muscles that you need for flow.
Yeah, exactly. The more you do it, the easier it gets to slip into that focused state.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be like formal meditation either. There are so many ways to practice mindfulness. You can just pay more attention to your senses during the day, notice your thoughts and feelings without judgment, or even just take a moment to appreciate the beauty around you. It's all about finding those little bits of presence throughout your day.
Okay, so schedule flow time, practice mindfulness.
Hmm.
What about things like sleep, diet, exercise? Do those affect our ability to get into flow?
Absolutely. Your physical health is super connected to your mental state, and flow is no different. If you're sleep deprived, your focus tanks, your energy is gone, and it's way harder to reach that effortless flow.
Oh, I can totally relate to that. If I'm running on empty, the last thing I want to do is tackle some big task that needs like deep focus. It's like trying to run a marathon on an empty stomach. You just don't have the fuel you need to perform.
Exactly. And it's not just about how much sleep you get, it's the quality too. Make
Mhm.
sure you're setting up a good environment for sleep. Dark, quiet, cool, and no screens in the bedroom.
So good sleep hygiene is important for flow.
Mhm.
What about diet and exercise?
Huge factors.
Yeah.
Regular exercise could lift your mood, improve focus, give you more energy, all of which help create that flow-friendly state of mind. And eating healthy, lots of nutrients, not too much processed food, that gives your brain the fuel it needs to function at its best.
It's like we're setting ourselves up for flow success when we take care of our physical well-being. It's all connected. Okay, so we've got scheduling, mindfulness, sleep, diet, exercise, anything else we can do to like boost our flow potential.
One last tip, and this one might sound a little counterintuitive, but it's about embracing challenges.
Oh,
Remember, flow thrives in that sweet spot where your skills meet a challenge that pushes you a bit outside your comfort zone.
so we shouldn't shy away from opportunities to grow, but what if those challenges make us, anxious or overwhelmed? Isn't that the opposite of flow?
It's all about finding that right level of challenge, of course. You don't want to set yourself up for failure, but you also don't want to just stay comfy, you know?
Mm.
It's about pushing yourself just enough to activate that flow state, to experience that awesome feeling of mastery and accomplishment.
It's like that quote from Theodore Roosevelt. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who, at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat. It's about having the courage to step up and embrace those challenges that'll ultimately lead to growth and fulfillment.
That's beautifully put. And I think that spirit, that courage, that willingness to face challenges, that's really at the heart of the flow experience.
Yeah.
It's not about seeking comfort or taking it easy. It's about pushing ourselves to be our best, to experience the world in a more engaged, meaningful way.
All right, we've covered a ton today. Before we wrap things up, let's take a minute to go over those key takeaways, give our listeners some tools to start playing around with flow state in their own lives. We'll do that right after this quick message. And we're back. I don't know about you, but my brain is like buzzing with all these flow insights. It's like we've unlocked the secret to a more productive, more fulfilling life.
I'm right there with you.
Yeah.
What's really cool is how practical and down to earth all this is. You don't got to be a Zen master or an Olympic athlete to benefit from flow.
Exactly.
It's about making choices, tweaking your environment, and just really understanding what makes flow happen.
Right. It's a skill. Anyone can learn it. But before we send our listeners off on their flow journey, let's do a quick recap of those key takeaways just to make sure everything's crystal clear.
Sounds good. First and foremost, we kind of debunk that myth about flow needing a perfect balance between your skills and the challenge.
Yeah. Yeah.
That Stanford research suggests it's actually about embracing that uncertainty, starting with not knowing and then working your way through it. That process of discovery, that seems to be what really gets the flow going.
So it's not about shying away from challenges or always seeking comfort. It's about like leaning into the unknown and trusting ourselves to figure it out. And the more we do that, the more we tap into those amazing benefits that come with flow.
Right, exactly. And speaking of benefits, we talked about how flow can boost your productivity, make you a better learner, spark creativity, and even lead to more happiness and well-being overall. It's not just about checking things off your to-do list. It's about like experiencing life in a more engaged, meaningful way.
So it's not just a productivity hack, it's a life hack. But as we've talked about, you can't just sit around and wait for flow to show up. It's something you cultivate, a state of being that you kind of have to invite into your life.
Totally agree. And remember those 9 components from that Psychology Today article? Those are like our guiding principles, our roadmap to create those conditions that make flow more likely.
Right, right. Clear goals, immediate feedback, that Goldilocks level of challenge and activity that really speaks to your values. And then setting up a space where you can focus, where you feel in control, and where you can, like, let go of that self-consciousness.
Okay, so how do we put all this into action? What are like the top 3 things our listeners can do today to start experiencing more flow?
Number one, definitely. Schedule dedicated time for activities that, get you into that flow state. Treat it like an important appointment, something you can't reschedule.
Yeah.
Prioritize it and be smart about how you use that time. Choose activities that light you up, that align with your passions, your values, the things that make you feel truly alive.
Absolutely. Number 2, cultivate that mindfulness.
Right.
Whether it's formal meditation, deep breathing, or just paying more attention to the present moment, mindfulness is going to train your mind to focus and be present. And those are key for flow.
It's like laying the groundwork, setting the stage for flow to show up. And the last one, number 3.
Embrace challenges. Don't shy away from those chances to grow. Those tasks that push you a little outside your comfort zone. Flow, it really thrives in that sweet spot where your skills meet a challenge that's worthy of them.
So be bold, be courageous, and trust yourself to navigate those uncharted waters. Now, before we wrap things up, I want to leave our listeners with a little challenge and experiment to try. Think back to a time when you felt that flow, that sense of being totally absorbed and energized by what you were doing. What was it? What were the circumstances? What made it so special?
Yeah, take some time to really think about that experience and then see if you can use what you learned to recreate those conditions in your life.
Right, exactly. What can you do to invite more of those flow moments into your daily routine? Because when you tap into that power of flow, you're not just getting more done, you're living more fully. You're experiencing the world with a heightened sense of presence, joy, and purpose. So go out there, embrace that uncertainty, find your flow, and see where it takes you. Until next time, happy flowing.